Are we all rolling?
Yeah, I'm rolling. Once Logan gets off his fucking phone, we can
I'm
start.
not on my fucking phone. It's a
He's on his fucking slipper.
slipper.
Gosh, that's the intro. Welcome to the Packcast. I'm Jeremy Van Suarez.
I'm Jacob Wade.
And I'm Logan Riley, the slipper Bruner.
And we are fresh off a wonderful wave of excitement. I guess this is kind of a mix of like housekeeping and an intro because there's not much to housekeep. If you had an eye on the Blackwolves Instagram account at any point in the last week, you would know that Zoom for Change has finally come to a close. We have 3 wonderful shows: The Story, Dinner with Friends, and DNA. And we've come to the end of it. It was a great time. It was so wonderful seeing all these works of theater go up. And yeah, I'm just really excited that this happened. Logan, give me what do you think about this?
Well, the first thing I think about it is that I want to give a heads up that Jeremy's house is under construction. So if you hear any banging, that's why. We're trying to, part of housekeeping, we're trying to keep it as minimal as possible.
Exactly. There's real life housekeeping going on.
Yeah, but we were warned beforehand, and I was like, I don't hear anything. And then the podcast started, and I instantly started hearing it.
I knew it was going to happen.
So big warning to everybody. I feel amazing. I feel great. We raised $2,500 in 3 weeks. And like 600 of that came in the last like 2 or 3 days. I've been on nonstop promotion for the past like 5 days.
We've been on nonstop work for the past 6 months.
True that.
Very true. Yeah, it was a long road. We'll get into the whole process of DNA after like everyone has their intro thoughts, but yeah, it was a long road, and I'm very glad that the people that came out, and that the people that were a part of it were a part of it, and it feels good to be done. It feels good to have premiered and have shown it to the world, and now it happened. It's a thing. It's a thing we created, and that feels really good.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like theater in the sense that we, rehearsed, and it was like a one night only thing that is now over and we can't revisit it. But at the same time, it feels like we just did a whole film process because we were recording multiple takes and we were editing together for months, really like perfecting moments and timing and justifying all of our choices behind the scenes after the fact of the actors making their choices. And like, honestly, I'd like to just thank everyone involved, whether it be someone I worked with or someone who supported by coming or donating. It means a lot to me that so many people were so involved in this process, and it was amazing. We've been working on this literally since like end of October, and
I mean, even going back to where we started in October, just look, I feel like casting was mostly you and Jacob. So like, can you tell me about like the casting process about this? Because even my dad had questions about it.
Sure. Will came to me with the idea that he had already talked to Jacob about, which was to do this fundraiser for Beam, because he was really passionate about that. And he asked me to direct a play called This Is Our Youth by Kenneth Lonergan, which I like a lot, but doesn't quite have the same place in my heart as DNA does. And then like 2 weeks later, Will hit me up and he said, hey, I'm actually thinking about doing something a little different. I think I might do This Is Our Youth with an all black cast. And before he said anything, I was like, okay, then I should not direct that. That should not be something that I should have my hands on. He went, great. I'm glad we're on the same page about that, but I still want you to be part of this. And so I pitched DNA. I pitched this show about teenagers trying to deal with covering up a murder. And he dug it, and Jacob knew the show, and Jacob wanted to play John Tate again. And so we went into that. And my first thought, just baseline, finally being out of college and having access to like a whole slew of artists, this was the first project that we've really gotten to do as a collective where I felt like I could use everybody. And so it was very important to me to make sure that the cast was, and it's gonna sound so like cliche and so like PC, but I wanted to make sure the cast was diverse. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have just a fully white cast. And so I went through and I wrote out a list of just like artists that I wanted to work with and people that I thought would fit in each role, and I ordered some stuff around. And then I just started reaching out to people, and a couple people said they couldn't do it. There were a couple people that we really wanted to work with, but who had scheduling conflicts or were too far removed from us and were kind of doing their own thing. And total respect, we ended up with the perfect cast. We ended up with a group that I wouldn't have changed for anything. But it was definitely a process. It was definitely a process of like finding the right people and picking everybody out and lining everything up. And I showed the list to Jacob when I finally like had a lock on it, when I was like, I think this is who we're going to have. And it was really cool to see like people from high school and people from college and then people I'd worked with in the real world. A little background for the people that don't know. The cast of DNA, if you saw it or if you didn't see it, was Ephraim Burney, Ryan Quigley, Allison Wynn, myself, Jacob Wade, Olivia Grady, Michael Jorge, Peter Santiago, Regan Sims, Addison Jenkins, and Sornelf Grea. Allison Wynn and I did Vox Lux together, which was a movie that came out like 2 years ago. That was where we first met, and we've been kind of circling and wanting to work with each other ever since. Ephraim I met through high school, but him and Ryan run a company called Bellhop, and they both also had the same manager as me, so we connected that way. Jacob, Regan, and Ephraim went to high school with Jeremy and I, and then
And Peter.
And Peter, yes, and Peter. But Peter is actually different because Peter went to Rosie's Broadway Kids when it was Rosie's Broadway Kids, later becoming Rosie's Theater Kids, with me when I was like 10. That's where we first met. And then we did like Reasons to Be Pretty together and stuff like that to keep us connected. But the final group of Soren, Addison, Olivia, and Mike were all from Purchase. I had worked with Soren, Mike, and Addison before on other projects, and I'd never gotten the chance to work with Olivia, so we all kind of threw our hats in on this. And then Lacey has stage managed for me in the past, Lacey Zerlip, who was our stage manager, and Jeremy agreed to co-direct. So that's kind of how all of that came together. I was very proud of the group that we got. I was, I think, surprised by everybody, by what they brought to their roles.
I was really surprised by all the new things that we found during the rehearsal process, which is great because that's kind of what comes after the casting. Now that we've casted everyone, it's time to start rehearsing.
Yeah.
And that first read through like was just eye-opening. I've seen DNA done once before in high school. I worked on a production of DNA in college, and so this is my third date with DNA. And you know, I have to say, on this third date, I really fell in love with DNA. You know, they're just, especially with the cast that we have, just bringing all these new things to the table, and it's even more like breathtaking when it's like you're discovering all these new emotions and these new moments all over this box that we all have to like put ourselves in because we're in the middle of a pandemonia. There's such a big difference between stage acting and film acting. Stage acting is full body, you know, not saying like you don't have to be fully committed in like film acting, but in stage acting, you got to be fully committed. Like you better be ready to do some cartwheels and some shit like that. You better turn it out because the audience is going to be watching your entire body for 2 hours or more. But in film acting, it's all hyper focus, and it's like, you know, maybe those like small like eyebrow movements that like convey a certain emotion can only really be done over film acting, whereas opposed to stage acting, you know, the audience is way more back. We can't really see the nuances of your face, so you kind of have to express some emotions with your body. But being able to have this box, this limit, allowed us to do more with the show.
Oh yeah,
than I think we originally expected to.
There's a really unique, I think, dichotomy between my character specifically, because Phil in the stage version typically does nothing. His character,
that's his shtick.
His characterization in the screen direction and in just the productions that I've seen is he sits and he does not respond. He listens, but he doesn't really acknowledge the other characters until it's time for him to speak. we realized very, very quickly that in Zoom, you can't do that. Because on stage, while it's super interesting to watch an actor not do anything because it's stage and you're so used to everyone doing stuff, to watch a character that's just not doing anything is so like inviting and so interesting to watch. On a Zoom production, it's incredibly boring, especially when there's another actor who already doesn't have the energy of an audience or another character try to bring stuff out of you. It's impossible to just like not acknowledge them at all. It very quickly becomes just a boring monologue where you're just staring at one person. And so we knew we had to do something different with the film version with that. And so I ended up finding a ton of new things with a character that I'd very much written off as just like, oh, he's just the guy that sits and listens and then solves the problem in the end. Myself and Allie ended up coming up with a really unique arc for Phil and Leah. And I got to actually like do emotional acting, which is something that I really like to do.
Yeah, that was something. I mean, that was something we realized this time around, that it's like Phil is not this quiet, unresponsive character. Phil is someone who, through his silence, still craves that connection.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's brought out even more through Zoom, because it's not only just that we're doing this through Zoom. We have like transferred the world of DNA into our present setting. In the world of our show, there is a pandemic going on, and our characters are actually forced to problem solve through virtual communication. And so when you have a character who is disengaged in connection in the real world, put into a situation where those connections must be further severed, it brings out that longing for human connection and human emotion. It was revelatory both on Phil and on Leah's sides. For most of the play, all the second scenes are just like long are dialogues question mark, but they're actually monologues because it's just Leah talking to Phil. As a first time viewer, I remember being like, A, like
Why?
Like, why? B, what does this have to do with anything? C, why is she talking so much? Like, you just have so many questions, and you're like, what does this have to do with anything?
What does she see in him?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, what does she see in him? And it's like, you can convey that still over stage, you know, because you kind of get the sense that these two are kind of like an item a bit. So there's like physical contact that can be used as like a method of like reassurance that can substitute for an actual vocal response. But again, you cannot do that over Zoom.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot physically reassure your partner, friend, whoever over Zoom. So like, how do make Phil care? Yeah. That was a challenge that we didn't really think about before the process.
For sure.
It's definitely something I saw come together in rehearsals, especially with Allison Wynn. I feel like in bringing so much to Leah brought so much to Leah's relationship with Phil. There are so many things that clicked in this third date with DNA that didn't necessarily click with me as an audience member or even like participant in the production for the first two renditions of this show that I had seen. Like, just so many things clicked, from trying to distract Phil after he's clearly overwhelmed after Act 1, Scene 3.
Yes, that scene finally makes sense now.
Right. Using the bonobos not only to distract Phil, like she's making an analogy between the like primal characteristics of bonobos to like us as a group of teenagers.
For sure.
So there's like that connection that Leah's making, and then there's also like the third layer that clicked for me for just that one scene is that when she gets into the sex talk, she's making like she's hinting at Phil that their relationship isn't where she wants it to be. They're not intimate. They are not connecting on a level that is satisfying Leah. And then it clicks even more later when Leah's out of there. And then I think the first time I saw DNA, I was like, what is this relationship? You know?
Yeah.
Like, who is it serving?
Watching
And-
watching it with my parents was a fun experience because they had never seen DNA before. So to hear their thought process going along with it, just like brought me a little bit of nostalgia.
Yeah.
I was gonna actually ask Jacob. We talked about Leah and Phil, but like as an actor in the show and as someone who's done the show before, what was kind of the rehearsal process like for you?
It was great. I mean, I'm only in that one scene, so I get to show off my sweet acting skills.
Hell yeah.
I think this time around, I had a lot more certainty as to what actually went down that day. And I think about why John Tate is the only character who's in that one scene and never comes back. And we talk about him, we hear about him, we get updates throughout the show. Like he's still a character that we should be keeping
Aware
in
of.
mind. Like John Tate though, but we don't see him. And it's so interesting to me. And I made the choice that John is the most guilty of anyone involved. And I think he threw that last rock or the first one. He feels the most guilty. And so he doesn't show his face. He doesn't involve himself. He doesn't go anywhere near that mess in order to separate himself the most. He's the one who at the beginning is trying to convince everyone that things are fine, even though he knows deep down that things are very not fine. He's very uncomfortable with the word dead. So much that he makes a rule of it not to say it, and he's threatening to beat up anyone who does acknowledge that truth that Adam may be dead. And then like he does his part in covering up the story, and then that's it. Like he's
Out of there after that.
wiped his hands clear, and he has nothing to do with anyone. He actually changes his life drastically and like turns to God because he needs that change in his life. And that change may not have come straight from John. John may have come home after that one day and like been different. His family could have known that something's going on, and he could have told them exactly what happened, and they might have pushed him toward
That
religion,
Yeah.
It's all speculation because he's not
he doesn't
written
come back.
to he's not written to explain himself. But this time around felt different. We weren't physically connecting at all. None of the actors were like in the same room. No one was feeding off of like literally the same energy, that vibe that you get when you're in the same room as another actor and you guys are like, it's the disconnect of the laptop made this experience so unique because I feel like we were on the same page, and then we were all on our own page, like writing the book ourselves.
This time around, doing DNA is the first time that we've been able to do DNA where we're older than the characters. And I think that fundamentally changes our understanding of how these characters act, because our characters are school kids. So they could be high school, they could be college, and we've seen it done in both settings. And now that all three of us are outside, graduated into the real world, now we get to look back and be like, okay, how does this really go down?
Right.
So we bring this kind of level of maturity to these school kids, but they still make those same school kid mistakes
because they're written to. I mean, this play is not about grad students,
Yeah.
It's not. I think that the actors being so mature brought a level of intelligence to the choices for these actors,
Totally.
For sure. I also think there's just an ability to be vulnerable that a lot of people had. And as a director, I think an interesting thing to watch was when you're doing the stage version or a version where you can all be in the same room, that monologue that Mark has the first time he explains that Adam's dead, you have 9 other people around you to be like, okay, I can hold on to something. This, everyone is just sitting at a laptop listening to this monologue and feeling it, and there's nowhere to go.
So isolated, yeah.
Yeah, so by the end of that monologue, it was kind of the first time that I had seen like the whole cast in tears. Like, I've done that production before where there's like a couple people maybe crying and then a couple people who are like holding firm and like, I'm gonna be the strong one. Like, this one, everyone was just like a mess because you don't really have anything to grab onto. You're just kind of spinning in this like vortex of guilt. And that, I think that does something different. It was really cool to get to do that monologue, to get to do the film monologue immediately after and just like watch everybody react to it. It was a really fun process.
Going back to something that was said earlier, you know, I think Logan referred to this as the film version, which is such an interesting thing to say. Like, we finding the balance between theater and film with this project, because theater can only go so far. I think that statement can be argued against in the sense of like an actual stage, an actual theater, but at home pandemic theater can only go so far. You know, it's like I can only change around my room so much to characterize it differently, whereas on a stage you have you know, there the possibilities are limited by only what your mind can think of.
Right.
And so we went through the rehearsal and through the filming process as if this was a piece of theater. Kind of. But I think we were truly faced with the reality of film when it came down to editing and the choices that we made. And like Jacob said earlier, being able to justify those more cinematic aspects and tying that into the feeling you get when you watch theater. Yeah, Jacob, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question to you
Go
guys.
ahead.
What do you think was the most challenging aspect of this process?
Group scenes. specifically 1-3, which is the first big group scene, which in all fairness is the longest scene in the show. It took us the most time. It made us the most angry. Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
I was just going to say, I think there's struggles, but there's also benefits. It was difficult because technically it's a lot of work. It's a lot of audio files. It's a lot of video files. It's a lot of switching cameras. Switching cameras is not always the easiest thing to do. So technically it was hard. However, artistically, turning it into a film was one of the coolest things to do, because if you ever have a take where you don't like one person's performance, but you like everybody else's, and there's another take where that person gives a better performance, you can just take their video and put it in the original take. So there were a few moments where it was like, I don't really love that reaction there. Is there another take that we could bring in to maybe like tie these two together so it feels like the same take?
We really had that reality stone, just being like,
Just bending
could be
reality.
whatever we want it to be.
Yeah,
so
you guys
in
get a
that
lot of freedom there in the editing room.
In that sense, it gives us a lot of freedom, a lot of like, we can kind of do what we want and have fun. But man, there were just like, there were chunks of just, okay, we've got to take his video from take 1 and her video from take 3 and all their video from take 2 and spliced them together. But the scene in take 1 took 2 seconds less than the scene in take 3. So it was just like, doing it as a live theater production in rehearsals and in filming, as like, we filmed all the scenes all the way through. There weren't really like, sure, at the end of the night, we did 1 or 2 pickups to make sure that we didn't like miss really specific moments. But it wasn't like we were like, all right, we're going to do 14B. This is just going to be from lines X to Y. It was like, no, we're going to do the entire scene all the way through. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to go back. We're going to do the whole scene all the way through. And we just did it over and over and over again until we thought that we were satisfied with the amount of work that we had.
Especially in these types of scenes where it's just like emotion built on emotion, built on emotion, built on, like, it's this like Jenga block of like drama and details. And so when you're able to record it, a whole scene from start to finish, you really do get that build.
I mean, yeah, it's also the idea of scene 1-3, which is the giant group scene, and scene 1-4, which is the bonobo speech that we've talked about a lot, is often separated by a blackout. We didn't. We just had it go right in, and it was the first time that we ever went, oh my gosh, this monologue makes sense because now it's connected to the last scene. So I think that was super cool to be able to like have all this live stuff happening and to make these new discoveries about like connections because we were running it like a play. And then at the same time with film, I think less a struggle and more just like something I really loved was I could force people to look at a certain part of the stage. Like,
yeah, that's what I was about to say, that it's like, you know, you asked us like challenges, and like while this particular challenge wasn't exactly challenging, it was a fun challenge that I enjoyed tackling, which was like, how do you make a film but still preserve that theatrical element?
right.
So it's like, yes, there are long bouts of silence in which even my dad was like, did the video freeze? And it's like, nope, it's just actors taking a breath.
They're just sitting there.
Like, yes, we're able to like force people into like these one-on-one confrontations with characters like Mark or Leah, and things like that, but also being like, well, in reality, if this were on a stage, we would be able to see everyone. So what is, you know, we're like really trying to maintain that like, what is everyone doing at this moment aspect, and balancing that with like the forced perspective was really fun, because then you start like working on it as a reflection of what's going on in the scene. So like one of my favorite editing moments is in 3-3 when Sorinoff Correa comes back as the boy, and it's Phil, Leah, Kathy, and Brian, and Leah is like trying to talk to Phil, and Phil kind of keeps like almost like kicking her out of the Zoom room, like into her own like breakout room almost. And it's like 3-shot of like Kathy, Brian, and Phil, and they're all like scheming, and then Leah by herself pleading for all of this to stop because she's the only one that's like not on board with this plan.
Yeah. You can show an audience who's on what side based simply on what cameras are turned on.
I loved that moment in 1-3 where John's trying to get everyone on his side, and he like just switches out everyone. He's like, I'm going to attack you, then I'm going to attack you, and it's like
he isolates them.
2-shot. Yeah,
I love that. And then there's specific like camera tricks that you can do. There's two different moments. One is way more subtle than the other, but where we do a zoom in, and you can't do that on stage. On stage, the best I can do is have a spotlight start tightening on one actor, and that's cool, but then I'm just watching a light move. In this, I could actually say to the audience, no, I understand that you want to escape this story. You want to look at anybody else on the stage. You're not allowed to right now. I'm going to force you into this one camera and make you watch this story. Because I know as an audience member, when I get confronted with something really uncomfortable on stage, I start looking at the other actors. You're like, oh, how's he reacting to this? How's she reacting to this? If I'm forced to just look at one person, there's definitely a much more unique, like, oh man, I'm stuck in here with them, and I just gotta watch.
Man, it's so different being like a film director and a theater director, right?
For sure.
Yeah, we really had to do this hybrid.
Yeah, we have to wear both hats.
Moving into editing, because we've been talking about it a little bit, but it's mostly been editing around the idea of filming. So we finished filming, right? We filmed in like 2 weeks.
We had to reschedule a few times because snow was falling.
Yeah, there was a blizzard, and then there was like another it was weird. It was just,
and it was like only on Tuesdays it's gonna snow.
Yeah, it was like snow warning. It was insane. But we finally finished, and then we got into the editing process, and we get through the entire show, and that's great, right? But we're doing a Zoom production. How do you do transitions? How do you do like, let's move from this scene to this scene? Sure, on stage you'd have sound design and you'd have set moving, but like in a Zoom production, there is no set. There's no like, we need to give the actors a moment to get to their place because we're filming. So like, we very much had to like brainstorm together what we did. And we came up with these really interesting little storytelling devices. It was the first time when we last did DNA, I did like 2 or 3 little transitions that told the story of what was happening between scenes, characters crossing, characters like looking for each other. And that's cool. It does something for the story. It tells the audience where the characters are. But there's such a difference between hearing that Kathy is on the television giving interviews about Adam and watching her do it. Being able to watch a character like do something that you're going to hear about them doing later in the show is such a unique experience that I fell in love with the transitions. And we got music that was originally written by the amazing Jeremy Van Suarez. So that was so fun.
A challenge for, I think, all of us who were editing was continuity. And the idea that in theater, when you are doing theater, every performance will be different. It's just a given. There's no two performances that will be the same. In theater, it can be different, it will be different, and it should be different every night. Although you keep, certain rehearsed elements the same, there's still that fresh feeling of listening, responding,
Oh, yeah.
and being in the moment
For sure.
with other people that keeps it so fresh. And there's that element is sort of lost in film, in the sense that if two different performances like were equally good, but you want to use one, not the other, and you try to put the better one, to you, in your opinion as the editor, in the project, and then suddenly the flow is disrupted because the choice is so different than it was in the other one that you're using. It's that was a huge challenge for me when it came to editing Dinner with Friends, and the story was that these actors are being fresh and in the moment, and you want to showcase the best performances, but sometimes the best performance isn't what's best for film, just because there will be like a cut and you'll be like, oh, what, he's over there now, or he's wearing this now, or oh, like did he just light that cigarette twice, like stuff like that, that I think you guys did an amazing job of covering up and editing around.
Thank you.
Because I mean, I didn't bat an eye watching this.
As one of the editors, I definitely batted my eyes at some points.
Okay.
But it's fine. I don't know. I also didn't mind it. Like especially like in the last scene, Peter is a very expressive actor, so he's not doing the same thing twice, which is great for stage, but not as great for film. Trying to work around that was a challenge, but then it also kind of like, when you see these like continuity cuts in the sense of film, it's almost like time has passed. All right. When two images don't connect, we have to assume that either something went wrong or like we're somewhere else now.
Yeah.
And to be able to use that illusion to our advantage, I think only benefited us. Whether we were hiding those continuity errors or displaying them on full force, yeah, I think it was only to the benefit of our creation.
For sure. I think having so many options was really nice because we got to really pick and choose what the best performance was. But yeah, it did lead to moments where it was like, that was such a good reading of that line, but does it make sense with the rest of the scene?
Yeah, it's like if I saw this on a night of theater, then I'd be happy.
But
but this is a one night only filmed event in which we must have total control, or not total control, but like 99% control over the audience's perspective.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what Logan said earlier about transitions, yeah, some of those transitions just ended up being like some of my favorite parts. Like that opening credits montage where we like show like parts of the plan that went into effect. It was like so exciting because it's something that's not written in the text. We never see the actual plan. It's all just the talk about it. So to kind of see not even the plan in motion, but like the after effects of the plan and like you as an audience, you can already be like, that's the footstep that Phil mentioned. That's the sweater in the plastic bag. It's exciting, and once again, it's something. I don't want to say you can only do this over film, because I think with the power of stage transitions, you probably can show the actual plan in effect. But to be able to show it this way with these like beautiful pan angles and this like these like camera flashes, so it's like you're in the moment. It was so fresh and exciting.
Yo, imagine this show in the format of West Side Story, the revival,
with the big screen behind.
Yeah, could you imagine that sort of hybrid theater
sure.
film? I can imagine DNA in that setting totally.
I definitely want to. DNA is not done for me.
I definitely want to do this. Like we have to do this like live.
Yeah, I want to do it. I want to do it like site specific, with like a forest and all of that. But then I also want to do it with projections and with a space where I can really use tech. It's one of those shows that I can keep coming back to over and over and over again.
Yeah, I want the chance to do this show night after night. I've never gotten the chance to perform
over and
over again, and find those moments that you only really find through repetition and through just trying new things. And that's one element of theater that I feel like was like I missed out on this time around, because like it's such a play. I missed that like cast camaraderie of like getting into these characters even when we're not on camera or on stage, you know, like that relationship building that you get as a cast. I was longing for that feeling throughout this experience, but
that's definitely an element of live theater that you cannot replicate over Zoom.
And I mean, even on the day, there was definitely a sense of like, oh, we're doing our like pre-show jitters. We all got together in Zoom and like celebrated the fact we were doing the show, and like joked around like we were in the wings waiting to go on. But you can't really like replicate that live theater pre-show nerves. But we tried. We certainly did. I'm super proud that we got to do this, guys. It was a really amazing experience.
I'm really happy with the end result. I'm proud of how we pushed ourselves creatively on all fronts. To be quite honest, I can't stop listening to like the end credits track. Like I know I'm like tooting my own horn here, but like everything about this show I'm just so immensely proud of.
Yeah, man.
We did it.
Yeah. We did
that. We really did that.
It totally paid off. And if you watched, thank you so much for watching the show. And more importantly, thank you so much for donating to Beam. Such a good cause. And I'm happy that we were able to be a part of that.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be announcing something new very soon.
But until then, you already know it's the content consuming hour. I was gonna like sip my coffee. So content we're consuming. I'm just gonna start. Jacob, you already know what we've been watching.
Yeah, you, dude.
F1 Drive for Survival. Is that right?
Yes.
Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Jacob and I might be getting into Formula One racing. Like, put that on your 2021 bingo card.
Dude, who would have thunk that we theater kids would be into sports? But this
Daniel Ricciardo, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton. They're all so dreamy.
Yeah, they're all like, I mean, there's not a single bad looking one in the batch. They're all handsome dudes. Come on.
Some of them. I'm not gonna say any names. I'm not gonna say any names. I'm just saying there are some prettier than others. Well, actually, what I really want to say, but before I continue talking about other content I'm consuming, is that it's just really nice to see Lewis Hamilton, right? He's the only I'm only on season 2 of F1, but he's the only POC driver.
He's the only person of color on that whole show in the whole sport, it seems.
Yeah, I was playing that game last time I was watching the episode. I was like, where are the people of color? And then there was one point where it's like some guys just like, hey, and I was like, cool, someone else. But like for Lewis Hamilton to be the only person of color,
there's also Alex Albon.
Oh, is that in season 3?
Oh, he may be no, he's season 2 also.
I feel
Alex
like I haven't met
Albon.
him.
Okay. All right. Yeah, he's I believe he is Filipino and British.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, he's not Filipino. He's Thai. He's from Thailand.
Ah, okay.
I should not say that.
For Lewis Hamilton to be the only person of color driver who is also leading all the races, constantly on the podium, essentially being the face of a mostly white dominated sport, is very satisfying to me.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Mercedes.
Yeah. Shout out Mercedes. Yeah, they know how to build a damn car. And Ferrari too. Renault, McLaren, do better, guys. At least, well, this is all. I'm going off old info. I'm going off 2019 info.
Yeah, you haven't even gotten to the pandemic episodes.
Exactly. Oh my god, those are good. I can't wait. Okay, so I'm watching F1. I'm really hooked on that. That's like my thing right now. I have to finish RuPaul. All hail the queen, whoever that is. I've been staying off Twitter, so because I really don't want it to be spoiled for me.
Who's your team, Jeremy?
Hashtag Team Simone, baby, and then hashtag Got Mick runner up, because in case Simone doesn't win, Got Mick should win. Falcon and the Winter Soldier season finale is a thing that, as of this time, I have yet to watch. But by the time this podcast will be out, I will have watched it. I am playing Black Desert, which is an MMO RPG.
I'm gonna get into soon.
Still playing Apex Legends. Still playing Warzone. I started playing Tales of Berseria. Tales is like a very long-standing RPG from Japan. And apparently Tales of Berseria is like the 17th entry. It's very like Final Fantasy-esque. And they're coming out with a new Tales game at the end of the year that looks pretty cool. So I was like, with the spring sale and these games only be $10, why not catch up on some stuff? Shouts out to the new Olivia Rodrigo track. I finally listened to Driver's License in full. And it's pretty good.
Took you too long.
I know. But even more, I'm on the GIVÄON train. I finally sat down and listened to GIVÄON's album. Boy, is that some good old R&B. Go listen to some GIVÄON, folks. I'm gonna pass it on. Logan, what are you consuming?
I consumed DNA last night. It was awesome. I am watching The Circle season 2. I'm on my reality show fix. You already know.
We're all getting our reality show fix somehow.
Yeah, come on. You're watching driving. I'm watching people try and trick each other over social media. I'm rooting for River. I don't know if he's still around. I have one more episode to watch in this little block of releases, but I hope he makes it all the way because I really do dig. I am Team River. I like the way he's playing the game. In addition to that, I'm watching the Irregulars, which I've talked about before, getting really good. Great British Bake Off. I played a little bit of the Deadly Tower of Monsters, which was not my cup of tea. But if you like 80s sci-fi movies and you're into like color commentary on movies, it's kind of a fun little nostalgic throwback. Binding of Isaac, I'm still playing. I started Assassin's Creed Rogue, which is very fun. Apex Legends, of course. I've been so consumed with working on DNA that I just haven't paid attention to anything else. I started season 2 of Fantasy High, which is really good. So that's the stuff that I'm watching. Jacob showed me a little Formula 1 the other day, so that was fun. Yeah. So that's the content that I've been consuming. Mr. Wade, what are you up to?
You already know, Formula 1, Drive to Survive, watching season 3 now. So good, so good. I don't have anyone who I'm rooting for because they're all just
I want to root for all of them.
They all deserve to be there. So I'm rooting for all of them. Even the underdog Haas. I'm rooting for the underdog Haas team, man. I'm rooting for them. I hope they do well.
I really like Romain Grosjean. He seems so sweet.
Yeah, Grosjean seems like a great driver. Still listening to the This Is Important podcast. They make me laugh so hard. Still playing Binding of Isaac. Thanks for the suggestion. Logan, he bought that game for me for my birthday. Still playing it. Great game.
I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah. That's all from me.
Nice.
All right. Well, that's all you get from this nice, delicious bowl of behind the scenes Zoom theater. Once again, thank you so much if you came out to see DNA or any of the Zoom for Change shows. And thank you even more for supporting the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective. If you would like to support them even further, once again, beam.community is where you have to go to make your donations, to get more info on them. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have nothing else to say. This was a great process, and we love you.
We'll see you soon for more.
We'll see you soon for more. From the Black Wolves' heart to your heart, we wish you a fantastic day. Peace! Peace!